Welcome to the Kongversation. I'm Hyle Russell.
I'm Chad McCanna.
And we are joined this week by just the sweetest guy on planet Earth. Alastair Craig.
Stop your nonsense.
Oh, yeah. Now
he's not so sweet that he won't step on what you're trying to introduce.
He always does that. He always does that because he is the most vain, egotistical man on the planet Earth, but also the sweetest. How you doing, Alastair?
Oh, things are pretty sweet.
So, Alastair, we have brought you on the show for a very special reason because we are going to be talking about an honorable bit of subject matter, that being Jet Force Gemini, which is not a proper Donkey Kong universe game.
Not at all, no. It is not something that we consider to be part of the canon of the Donkey Kong universe. However, there's a lot of edge cases. There's a lot of games that almost made it or have some very, close links that more open-minded people would say, well, yeah, sure, that's part of the Donkey Kong universe. Why not? We're a lot more rigid in our rules. It keeps it going. I mean, it's been, our rules have kept this whole thing afloat for over 15 years now. So
with a few slight amendments. Yeah.
However, I understand that Jet Force Gemini is one of the front runners for regret, in which these rules that you have bound yourselves to have backfired, meaning you cannot cover a game that you would obviously love to cover.
Yeah. In fact, Jet Force Gemini is, I think, the first regret that we ever had because
my first regret was junior high.
Oh well, I'd say that was my first regret. But as it pertains to the Donkey Kong universe, Jet Force Gemini. But Jet Force Gemini came out in October of 1999, a scant 2 months after DK Vine was launched.
And this was an incredible few months there because as far as anyone was concerned, Perfect Dark was also coming out that Christmas, I believe, or roundabout.
No,
right.
I think it got delayed ultimately to the next year.
Yeah, Perfect Dark came out ultimately in 2000. But
right, but it was announced for 1999.
Yeah. And even 12 Tales, the original Conker, was, I believe, destined to be released around that time too.
Yeah.
So it was going to be a very dense year for Rare titles.
Well, yeah, this was an incredibly fertile period for Rare. I mean, this whole span of, let's say, 8 years or so, it was just, it's unbelievable the product they put out.
8 years.
I'm going 94 to 2002. The whole period from DKC to the end of their working relationship with Nintendo.
Yeah, I think that was the period in which the barn separation of development teams was really at its most stringent. So that, these days you can't develop a AAA title or even a title that demands exhaustive resources like Kinect Sports. I mean, say what you will about it, it's a beautiful game, it's very well designed, it's very well polished. You can't do that with a team of 7 people sitting in a barn. Obviously, all of Rare.
Have you ever tried to do it with 6 other people in a barn? I think it could be done.
That's a fair point. It perhaps could be done in a quarter of a century, but for the output that Rare was producing, really, the N64 and SNES eras were the only console generations that lent themselves to this style of development.
Don't forget about the original Game Boy. The Killer Instinct Game Boy is one of my favorite Killer Instincts.
I said eras.
Killer's Instinct, if we could pluralize that properly.
Thank you. Like Surgeons General. No, I did say those eras because, of course, that included the handheld team, which was just one barn. But though in those days, the resources were less demanding, especially on the art side. So you could have, a couple of developers, a couple of artists, a couple of quality assurance specialists, and a Lee Loveday, and put out a game. And that allowed Rare to have so many projects running in parallel. And Jet Force Gemini was one of those many fruits that they reaped.
Yeah, it's ridiculous that I was talking about this with DK Vine staff member Jeff, who just appeared 2 weeks ago defending Smash Brothers. We kind of ganged up on him, and it got ugly. But I was talking with Jeff about how it's kind of amazing to me how when Iwata took over, how little consideration he gave Rare. When you look at what Rare did for the N64,
kept it afloat.
Well, I mean, maybe that's our Western perspective, but.
It's not, though. It's not. I'm sorry, but outside of Mario 64 and the Zelda series, Rare kept that system afloat single-handedly.
You look at what Nintendo had. Smash Brothers wasn't the all-encompassing force of nature that it is today. You had the Mario Party games, whatever. You had Mario Kart 64, and then you had Super Mario 64 and Zelda. You had the two Zeldas, Ocarina and Majora, and I would never forget about Majora, Chad. But
thank you.
You look at what Rare had: Diddy Kong Racing, Banjo-Kazooie, Conquer at the tail end, GoldenEye, of course, Perfect Dark. Then you had, Blast Corps,
Mickey Speedway USA.
Well, of course, yeah. But so much of the classic N64 lineup was all from Rare. I mean, it's unthinkable today that one studio could have this absurd output.
And one relatively small studio as well. I mean, the teams for these games were literally contained in barns.
Yeah.
That's a delightful absurdity that it's so easy to take for granted because, we were teenagers and we had nothing better to do but write fan sites about these people.
Glad we grew out of that, right?
But yes, it's so easy to forget that just a simple statement. These were development teams in barns.
But I think that adds to the kind of eccentric nature of it all, like that kind of Willy Wonka's Chocolate Factory magic that this era of Rare represents for all of us.
And if you do go to Rare, I have stood outside Rare's headquarter gates, and
you were chased off their property.
And yes, I trespassed a little bit and was chased off by their doddering security detail, but
along with Matt Corna.
Are you ever going to share that video?
It exists. I need to dig it up on a hard drive that's gathering dust under my bed. I hope to one day. But at any rate, Rare was like Willy Wonka's Chocolate Factory in more ways than one, in that it was like this like I would imagine someone being...
They had orange slaves?
Yes, they had orange slaves, and one of them chased me off the property. No, but like they were so secretive. Rare was the place that magic came from in those days.
Yeah.
Do you remember in The Simpsons where Bart looks into the Mad Magazine offices?
Oh, yeah.
It's kind of, you just imagine that.
Right. That was in the episode that's no longer allowed in syndication.
Oh, I'm sure they've revoked that by this point. It's at least on FXX.
Oh yeah, I guess so. That was the Homer Simpson versus the city of New York, where his car is parked between the World Trade Center towers.
Yeah. But, I mean, yeah, that was the Season 9 premiere, and the less said about Season 9 onwards, the better.
Season 9 is good. Shut up.
Season 9 is 50% good.
Thank you, Alastair.
Thank you, Alastair.
Alastair, bringing the compromise to the conversation.
Exactly. Alastair just brought agreement to both Hyle and my slightly divergent opinions of The Simpsons quality.
Yeah. Yeah, so this, I mean... Look, obviously, my bread and butter is the Donkey Kong universe, like games that we deem to be part of this shared canon, and that one game spawns from another game. So that's where my main interest lies, but I have a love for this whole era of Rare. So I think I was the one who said we should do the Jet Force Gemini episode. Like, the three of us were talking the other week, and I said, as we're wont to do, the three of us just get together, have some guy time,
Yeah.
Gets a little loose, but
little mutual masturbation. It's all good.
Little bit of the tips touching. But I said, you guys were talking about Jet Force Gemini. I was like, look, on DK Vine right now, DK Vine forum member Milo is hard at work on crafting something for our site called Honourable Mentions.
Yes, and by the way, honorable, since Milo is Australian, and he's spearheading this, and Matt Corna is implementing it on the main site. Matt Corna is from England, we have decided to embrace the UK spelling of honourable. So
which is actually the proper English spelling of it. It's not the Americanized English. It's
okay. American English is no less valid than proper English. We're in a modern world. There are just two different spellings, but we are deferring to those who are doing it.
okay. I'm just saying we came second, and
Well, yeah, but
second comes right after first.
exactly. Thank you, Alistair.
and one is the loneliest number. So, yeah.
And I must say that this acknowledgement of England and its colonies does bring us one step closer to my ultimate goal as far as DK Vine is concerned, which is that you acknowledge the children's game show Amazing as part of the Donkey Kong universe.
Oh, this is the one where there are kids that play the first Donkey Kong Country game as a speed run to collect points.
Yes, but the following round, they play an animatronic maze, part of which is clearly set in the Congo jungle.
Oh,
And it includes not one, but 3 animatronic Donkeys Kong.
Those are probably the additional Donkey Kong Juniors that have been recently discovered, all grown up. and to read more about those alternate Donkey Kong Juniors, check out the DK Vine forum. It's never been a better time to join.
If you want to talk about alternate Donkey Kong Juniors.
Donkey Kong's Junior.
Thank
Donkey
you, Alistair.
Kong's Junior. Yeah.
And I shit you not, there is an active thread right now about multiple Donkey Kong's Junior.
I came in with my explanations, which I had prepared just in case this was ever brought up. I had it in a little, manila, folder marked the Donkey Kong's Junior controversy.
Yeah. It was, spoiler alert, it's either to do with holograms,
Nope.
time travel,
Yes.
or oh shit, it was time travel. Oh my god, I was okay.
Only for Game and Watch Gallery 4 though, so let's not get silly.
Oh my god, it was actually time travel.
Travel for
fuck
one.
you, Hyle. Anyway, let's.
I'm going to steal a quote from a previous conversation I guested on, and say that nobody you're listening to right now is a virgin.
That's true. Believe it or not.
Granted, I had to go back in time to have sex with my past self, but
That's true, but it counts. It still counts.
It counts. Yeah.
Yes. There's
I believe that was a hologram, though.
a hologram refracting off the sea of coral capers.
However,
Right.
this encounter was reflected in the goldfish bowl of an orange goldfish that tapped the side 3 times,
That's right.
which mean it is valid.
It is DKU. So
I wanted to give Milo one more plug for his hard work.
absolutely.
We're going to have that up on the main site really soon, and it's going to be a list of honorable mentions of games that almost made it into the Donkey Kong universe, but for one reason or another, usually they came out, the character that it starred or whatever came out before their appearance in the Donkey Kong universe.
Yeah, well, the one central rule that we follow with the definition of the Donkey Kong universe is that a character originating from Donkey Kong Country in 1994 must make a physical appearance, and then the series branches out from there, especially with Diddy Kong Racing.
Similar to the discussion we had last week about the Tommy Westfall universe. It's the opposite of that, where
Right.
we don't consider a simple crossover does not make that entire entity that it crosses over with part of that universe. It's only that one singular event is part of that universe.
Right.
No
But
characters that they interact with or that are introduced in that singular event are then to be considered part of the Donkey Kong universe. It has to be part of that initial spark that started in 1994.
Yes, and the Tommy Westfall universe is much looser with the rules. They will validate, for example, ultimately the show Lost became part of the Tommy Westfall universe. I can't remember how.
How on earth did Lost become part of that?
I don't know, but it
I believe
was.
there's a mention of the airline in another show.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
perhaps Alias?
Oceanic. Yes. And so that mention of the airline, not a physical character, but that entity exists. Therefore, the universe is sound. And then in Lost, if you look at the hot air balloon that the real Henry Gale landed in, it had an advertisement for Nazala Cola, which is a cola that only exists in Stephen King's Twinner universe that includes the town of Derry, Maine. That was a Stephen King reference that the Lost production designers were making.
I should point out that the people who made this connection were virgins.
Right. That was me, and I was a virgin at the time.
But it was certainly in the interest of people developing this ridiculous shared universe to make it as chaotic as possible.
Right.
I've never looked into that myself. I'm assuming that they just revel in the pure chaos of it.
Yeah.
I do hope that's not being taken too seriously.
Well, I do know that the Lost writing team at large were huge Stephen King fans, and Stephen King was a huge Lost fan.
I mean, they had the rights to adapt The Dark Tower at one point, didn't they?
They did, actually. Yeah. Abrams and I believe Lindelof and Hughes were developing
so,
it.
yes.
Yeah. And I don't know where that's going now. I think Ron Howard has it now with Brian Grazer. But at any rate, like the existence of Nazala means that everything that took place in or around or referencing Derry, Maine, which is about a third of Stephen King's prodigious library, is part of the Tommy Westphall universe. So, there are very loose rules connecting all of that into the autistic kid's snow globe. But for our purposes, we wanted to restrict it a bit more. We only counted...
Because you need to write about this.
Exactly.
There isn't a Tommy Westphall site out there where they have to have slavish synopses of every single show and novel that they cover.
Right.
You guys actually have to take screenshots.
Yeah. And Super Smash Brothers alone would have destroyed us. So we basically decided that starting at Donkey Kong Country, any character introduced in the DK mainline would the Donkey Kong universe would follow them.
By the way, Donkey Kong Universe was probably a poor choice of name. I think I was the one who suggested it because it was a play on the DC universe, so DCU, DKU. But we really should have called it the Donkey Kong Country universe because that's really what it is.
Right, but if we had adhered to the arcade game, then every Mario game ever would have been
right. But a lot
DKU.
of people don't realize we don't cover the arcade games. We don't really care about them
until now.
Well, they're going to be segregated,
right?
Separate but not equal. But
this effort is again led by the gentleman called Milo, who has organized this whole honorable mentions effort. So anyway,
right, they're still not part of the Donkey Kong universe. I want to clarify that, but we are. We are going to give them their day in the sun.
Thou doth protest too much, sir.
I just don't want people to get confused with this whole concept that we spent a good chunk of our life trying to present and make a case for.
At any rate, since the DK mainline introduced Diddy, then any game that Diddy was in that introduced another character would then spawn a spin-off series. So what we wound up with was Diddy Kong Racing that introduced Banjo the Bear and Conquer the Squirrel. So we also cover Banjo-Kazooie and that series and the Conquer series, which is, aside from Project Spark, largely fizzled out. But then, in Banjo-Tooie, the character of Mr. Pants was introduced, which fed into why this is an honorable mention.
Well, this is an honorable mention for a couple of reasons. We should probably get into those.
All right.
Let's first explain why exactly this game is an almost DKU game. And then we'll actually talk about the game itself and if it's any good or not.
Oh my God. I can't believe that would even be an option.
I mean, if it's not, the DKU, all those games are of the utmost quality. You look at, Mario Party 7 and you're like, well, sure, Jet Force Gemini might be good, but it's at Mario Party 7 good?
Yeah. Is it Donkey Kong Barrel Maze good?
Hey, don't diss Barrel Maze, man. Proudest moment of my life was beating that.
Oh my God, I can't believe you actually did. I don't think that game's QA department actually beat the game, but you somehow did.
It was still easier than Donkey Konga 2, so hats off to you, Barrel Maze development team, which was probably one guy in a barn.
Right. He was the
and
loner.
he was just there to rape the sheep, so...
He thought, yeah, in between sheep rape, I'll develop Donkey Kong Barrel Maze.
I'm sure Candy Stand and Nintendo will be interested.
Yeah.
I can't wait for the Spotlight episode on Barrel Maze.
Fun fact, I used to work for the company that bought CandyStand.com.
Did you ask anybody about Barrel Maze?
I did not, because I hated my life at the time. That was up until about 2 months ago.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, Chad, you could have gotten a DK Vine exclusive for us, and then that would have made you happier in your life.
Oh, my God.
You really let us
right.
down.
I did. I'm sorry. Let me go back to working for Publishers Clearinghouse.
And are they the Ed McMahon guys or the...
They are not. No, I made that mistake, actually. I thought that Publishers Clearinghouse
Wait, why the hell did Publishers Clearinghouse buy Candy Stand?
I don't know, but they did. I thought the Publishers Clearinghouse was the company that had Ed McMahon distributing the giant checks. So when people would ask me, like, hey, do you know about the Prize Patrol? I'd be like, I said this to several people, my boss included. All I know is that, it's Ed McMahon with the giant check, and they would say, ha, 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 yeah, no, but it's actually this. No one ever corrected me. Ed McMahon distributed giant checks for the American Family Sweepstakes or something like that. Very, very much along the lines of Publishers Clearinghouse, but a completely different company.
I like how we can always bring this show back around to The Tonight Show. In some way, some form, this is part of the Tonight Show universe. Or we're at very least a cameo game. We're at very least a cameo
you
show.
Wild man. A reference I only know from participating in serialized sci-fi comedy podcasts with the two of you.
That's right.
Yes,
that would be the Vine Donkey Kong audio program. And it's not actually a reference so much as a misappropriation of Kevin Eubanks.
But I only know of Kevin Eubanks through your references and you teaching me how to do references. So it is just so far removed from reality at this point.
Right. So just for any listeners who haven't had the pleasure, at one point in our other more story-based podcast, we wanted Alastair to...
playing a robot.
An Alastair robot, Bidet 52, to basically play the part of Kevin Eubanks to our Jay Leno. And one of the lines was, "You wild man." But that's how it was written in the script. So Alastair said...
Chad, you wild man.
Oh, man. So, anyway, it was hilarious.
Somehow I've managed to derail you further.
That's okay. That's what the show's here for. So, although we are 24 minutes in, so we need to start talking about Jet Force Gemini.
It is a really good game. Let's just get that out of the way.
It's
I love that game to death.
amazing!
Okay, that out of the way.
But why isn't it Donkey Kong Universe, guys? Why isn't it Donkey Kong Universe?
Well, there were no physical appearances of Donkey Kong Universe characters in the game, and I had held out hope because in Banjo-Kazooie, which came out in the summer of '98, Gobi said, "I'm going to the lava world. You'll never find me there." And so I was obsessively looking for any reference to a lava world in an upcoming Rare game. And in Jet Force Gemini, there was a lava world called Eshibone. And I was convinced that Gobi would be in Eshibone. And that's pretty much the main reason I devoured the game upon release before Donkey Kong 64 came out, was to get to that stage, which was basically 85% through the game. and it's a massive game, and there was no Gobi to be found, of course.
Yeah, I remember they announced Jet Force Gemini, I believe it was in the summer of '98. And so this was right in the middle of Banjo-Kazooie mania.
Right.
And so I, with my Nintendo Power in one hand, my Banjo-Kazooie Player's Guide in the other, I would spend like summer card trips that year reading about Jet Force Gemini, and this was probably when I was trying to figure out like the ice key and the eggs, and when stop and swap wasn't even a term we knew. It was just you Banjo-Tooie, ice key, eggs, Gobi, lava world. There are all these like key mysteries that you had to figure out.
Beak bomb it.
What's that?
Beak bomb it.
Beak bomb it. That's right. So I was reading about Jet Force Gemini, this new game Rare announced, and they showed a picture of a planet. I don't know what planet it was, but that's when the kernel of the idea. And this was before Chad and I even met or even started talking. So the kernel of the idea developed in my mind too. As I bet the lava world is in Jet Force Gemini, because already I was thinking, Rare is building this massive shared universe. They would be silly not to put one of these characters in this game. And I believe I even asked Lee Loveday on Scribes in '99 if Gobi was going to show up, or if any existing Donkey Kong Universe characters were going to show up. And I think this was the first instance of us asking Rare, hey, is this game in this arbitrary fictional universe we just devised? I
was going to say, go ahead.
Most recent examples being the Connect Sports games, which actually they did put Royston in Connect Sports Season 2 for us.
No, Connect Sports.
Royston, of course, being
Connect Sports
the
Rivals.
goldfish.
No, Chad. Connect Sports Season 2 is the game they put Royston in.
The one with the golf thing?
Yeah, we didn't realize it. That was just uncovered a couple of months ago.
Oh, I thought that was Rivals.
Connect Sports Rivals has the DLC with
with Mumbo and the Battletoads.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I'm
Now,
sorry.
gentlemen, I made a comedy sketch involving somebody in an orange goldfish hat named Roy tapping on a door 3 times.
Oh.
How have you not made that part of your fictional arbitrary universe?
It was not rated by the ESRB.
It's not a video game, Alistair. Not a video game, and that's pretty important for us. But
I stand by my assertion that the maze in Amazing, the Australian children's game show, is a video game, an arcade game specifically, that is only accessible to 4 Australian school children per week in the mid to late 90s. And therefore must be covered, and therefore you must have a character biography. I'm sorry, I'm getting a bit choked up. This is something I feel very strongly about.
That's quite all right.
You must have a character biography of host James Sherry.
And each of those school children.
Well, they are the players, so
Yeah.
I suppose...
Is there ever a cut to the audience? Because that could get very complicated.
No, I maintain that that you don't need to cover the game show, just the maze itself. And there is an instance in which one of the school children got their key, the key that they found inside, caught on a piece of netting. Host James Sherry, also of Saturday Disney fame, had to run into the maze and help them out and say, "It's yours, keep going." This was the one recorded instance of him entering the maze. However, he formed part of the gaming system in influencing and helping in relation to the rules. Therefore, he is part of that game alongside those animatronic Donkey Kongs. I'm sorry, I'm getting a bit choked up again, but
he is
very close to my heart.
He is the Cranky Kong of this game. He provided assistance.
Broke the fourth wall.
Yeah. I'll tell you this, Alistair. I will lobby for this game to be included in the honorable mentions.
Well, actually, Milo, being Australian, may actually love that opportunity.
Fair enough. Milo, the gauntlet has been thrown by Mr. Craig, and I anticipate you picking it up.
By the way, this would be a good point to plug Alistair. Plug Alistair's many videos on YouTube. Cheeky Moon.
That's right. Cheeky Moon Productions, a series of fantastic, hilarious comedy bits. Alistair, tell us what the audience ought to check out. What are your top 3 or 4?
Well, let's go with the things that are most relevant to listeners of a Donkey Kong podcast. We have one called My Friend Jeff. And this was a musical reenactment of a process we have in real life here in Brisbane. Some friends and I purchased a lavish oil painting of Jeff Goldblum. In fact, if you Google image search Jeff Goldblum, it will be one of the first things you'll find. It's a painting called Ian Malcolm from Chaos, featuring him leaning back in a recreation of Michelangelo's Creation of Man. It is a beautiful piece, and
with a butterfly on his finger in place of God's own.
Yes, and a storm developing behind it. He's in that pose in Jurassic Park where he's leaning back shirtless and wounded.
right.
It's quite a well-known image.
As Robert
at this point.
Muldoon and Ellie Sattler are presumably being eaten by velociraptors.
We a few of us got a little bit intoxicated one night and said, we're grown adults. What's to stop us from pooling our money and actually buying this actual thing?
Certainly not disposable income.
We went ahead with it and no regrets. And we've successfully. It is not devolved into a treehouse style Barton Millhouse fight.
I was about to make that reference, so I'm glad two other like-minded people are here.
Wasn't Martin also part of that?
Yes.
Yeah, that was a good one.
So we decided to actually make a bit of a fictionalized version of that. We made it the music video. We got DK Vine's own Matt Corner to do a musical number called My Friend Jeff. It is insanely catchy. I have friends who I've played the song to once 6 months ago who can still just recite it on cue, who have not heard it in the intermediary time. It is... we all know Matt has an insane gift for melody.
Yeah.
Yes, we also got narration from one Mr. Chad McCanna.
Oh, that's right. You did, didn't you?
Yeah,
Didn't ask me to do anything.
We also have a clip called Super Mario. I forget what it's called, but it's a Super Mario Brothers speedrun.
Video James,
featuring DK Vine's own Jeff Onan as Video James himself.
Doesn't he say it's Video James and it's time for video games or something like that?
No, his catchphrase is "Let the James begin."
Yes. Yeah, and that's our own Jeff Onan being hijacked by two people from Cheeky Moon.
Yes, but look, we are tremendously proud of this little sketch comedy channel we've created. We made about 41 videos last year, and we're just getting into we were just preparing for our second season of weekly sketches, and I'd be pretty chuffed if you all checked it out. It's at youtube.com/cheekymoonfilms or facebook.com/cheekymoon.
Or dkvine.com/cheekymoon.
Oh, no.
Aw. You're too kind.
You're going to have to remember to do that now, Chad.
I'll try to.
You'll try to, okay.
Amidst all the rampant marijuana smoke.
What?
What?
You mean coming from your neighbor's room?
That's right. At any rate, Alastair, I hope we can drive some more traffic your way because it is certainly worth it. Cheeky Moon Productions has been like a weekly little nugget of joy that I get to observe. So thank you for doing it. I'm looking forward to season 2.
Absolutely,
Me too. Very much so.
And thank you for taking time away from it to be with us here tonight. Instead of providing nuggets of joy, you're instead talking about a game
I should
nobody
actually
remembers.
theoretically be editing right now.
Yes.
Yeah. So that plug should have happened at the end of the show. But what else should have happened in the middle of the show? Discussion about Jet Force Gemini.
What? With Jet Force Gemini? I remember that game.
So there were several reasons that Jet Force Gemini was an honorable mention. There was a picture in the main game itself of Mr. Pants on a castle in Tofrit, if I recall correctly.
I believe you're correct, yes.
Okay, yeah. So the first boss of the game was on the third stage. You play as Juno. Okay, we need to back up. Because the game is about a galactic federation called the Jet Force. And the Jet Force, when the game begins, has been decimated by this evil dictator guy insect thing called Mizar. And the only element of the Jet Force that we know of, aside from on Earth, that remains, or the only element of the Federation, is the Jet Force Gemini. So named because it is piloted by two twins, a la the Gemini zodiac sign, Juno and Vela, and their faithful dog Lupus, who has lupus.
It's really sad.
Yeah, it's a tragic disease.
They have to put him down at the end, right?
That's the twist ending. But at any rate, you start the game. Well, the cinema basically splits up Lupus and Vela from Juno, so you start playing as Juno. You go through Goldwood, the first space station that's been taken over, called the SS Anubis, and then you get to Tofrit. And Tofrit is where you fight the first boss. But on Tofrit, in the castle leading up to that boss fight, there's a poster of Mr. Pants. And at this point, in 1999, Mr. Pants was not the stylized gentleman, you know, from It's Mr. Pants. He was just an MS Paint piece of crap designed by Lee Loveday that we all loved.
And it should be pointed out this was the first reference to Mr. Pants in a video game proper.
Right,
because
it was tremendously exciting.
He was
to feel in on a joke like that, and such a specific joke.
He was created in Scribes, on the Rareware website. I believe he was created in, 98?
Yeah, it was around there, yeah.
So this was the first time Rare was referencing their website in a video game in such a way.
And by that point, Mr. Pants had also taken over the survey section of Rareware.
Right. And it should be pointed out, Mr. Pants did not appear as a physical character in this game.
Yeah, he was more like the Mizar's drones had graffitied him on the wall of the temple in Tofrit.
So this was just Rare being self-referential, but this wasn't... Because if this was a physical appearance of Mr. Pants, then suddenly It's Mr. Pants wouldn't be part of the Donkey Kong universe.
Exactly. But then, in addition to that, there were a couple non-main line, a couple references to the Donkey Kong universe that weren't part of the main story campaign. Greenwood Village, which was a racetrack in Dragon Forest in Diddy Kong Racing, actually showed up pretty much in its entirety as a multiplayer or additional racetrack in this game. There were segments where you would race vehicles as the ant drones in Jet Force, and they just added this racetrack in the game.
It was a really cute touch.
Yeah. There was also a...
Now, did they change it in any way? Like, did they make it more sci-fi, or was it just
No, it was
Greenwood
pretty
Village?
much as is.
Yeah, the only difference that I remember is, well, obviously you didn't get the Greenwood Village music, and I think...
The Well shortcut, I believe, was missing.
Yes, and the bell that you would have to ring, I think, was not ringable. Something like that. But
did these games share an engine? Would it have been easy to transpose one into the other?
I'll tell you this: the engine that I can compare this to the most, just judging by the way the textures appear, it looks like Jet Force and Mickey Speedway USA were branched off of the same engine, but I don't see any connective tissue to
Actually,
Diddy Kong Racing.
come to think of it, both Jet Force and Diddy Kong Racing did have a same occasional graphical glitch.
Oh yeah?
In which one polygon would just stretch out off the corner of the screen.
Huh.
Maybe it was just me.
I never noticed that. That might be a PAL version thing. But
Yeah, that sounds like
perhaps.
problems that happen in emulators when Rare games get emulated. N64 Rare games, there's that glitch. It happens with Donkey Kong 64 and some others.
Yeah, and that's largely due to the way that Rare basically hacked the assembly code of the Nintendo 64 to get the most performance they possibly could out of it. So
That's the other incredible thing about Rare is they didn't just put out an amazing amount of games. They always got every last drop out of the hardware.
Right.
It's just ridiculous. I mean, they're doing that to this day, but it's just ridiculous what they could do with a system.
And Jet Force Gemini, in particular, just really pushed it to its extremes.
Yeah, and granted, Jet Force Gemini had its fair share of lag. I played it last night and the night before to refresh my memory, and it certainly doesn't hold up, and neither do any N64 games to modern standards. But you sort of, just as any work of art, you have to observe it and appreciate it in context. And Jet Force Gemini pushed that system to its limits.
Even at the time, the frame rate, by those standards, could barely keep up.
Yeah.
And it was an acceptable compromise, given the pure chaos of this game.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so much going on constantly, especially given the pretty decent artificial intelligence that every drone embodies. But yeah, I mean that's gotta have its own toll that it takes on the processing in general. But there was a special cheat code called Ants's Pants.
Speaking of drones and bodies,
Basically, Ants's Pants replaced all of the base drones in the game, which are the blue foot soldiers, with
gigantic ants.
Yes, giant ants. Which, by the way, in high school, I made a papier-mâché mask of a sniper ant. Alastair, I think I showed you this when you were in Houston a few years ago.
It's entirely possible.
Yeah, as an
Well,
art.
I remember you showed me a black and green bound folder labeled Green Porn City.
I did show you that. Let us never speak of it again.
And you also played the Virtual Boy for the first time.
That's right.
That was delightful.
Hey guys, I was there too.
I would like to.
But when digging through that box, I know that I pulled out this. I made a human-sized papier-mâché mask of a sniper drone from Jet Force Gemini in my 9th grade art class.
And that's actually the mask you were wearing when you lost your virginity.
That's right. Thanks, Janelle. But anyway, the blue drones, not the snipers, but the foot soldiers, would all be replaced by 3-dimensional versions of the MS Paint Mr. Pants. When you put in the Ants's Pants code. The best place that I found to use that was Mizar's Temple, because just outside the landing area, there were probably 10 or 15 soldier ants running around. So you would just be swarmed by Mr. Pantses.
Again, not a physical appearance, because there's no way that would actually be Mr. Pants.
It was a cheat code.
It was a cheat code.
And if I may, Mr.'s Pants.
Thank you.
Sorry, but that would be like DK mode in GoldenEye. That would be like saying, "Oh, Pierce Brosnan actually became Donkey Kong," which is the subject of a fanfic I'm working on, but not so much as far as the actual Donkey Kong universe goes.
Right. So, also, in Banjo-Tooie, one of the many examples of rare cross-promotion, cross-pollination, Bottles' children, Specky and Goggles, are big Jet Force fans because they have posters of Juno and Vela in their rooms.
Yeah, I don't know what that suggests. Maybe Jet Force Gemini is like a sci-fi epic like movie series in the DKU, and or maybe it's actually really happening. I don't know, but
it definitely suggests that Specky is an incredibly horny preteen, because the poster that he has of Vela is essentially an upskirt.
Yeah, I just love the idea that moles masturbate to like sci-fi like cheesecake.
Yeah.
So it's reverse furryism.
Right. Oh God, I love how little further is on your body. Oh. So, yeah, obviously, Alastair and I are intimately familiar with this game. Hyle, how much did you play this game when it came out?
Well, here's the thing about me and Jet Force Gemini. Pre-release, I was really following it, and a big part of that was, I thought there would be ties. I thought Gobi would show up. I thought it was going to be connected to this grand tapestry that I was already. This was before DK Vine, but I was already following the Donkey Kong universe. Like these rules were already set before Chad and I even met. But then Chad and I kind of met in '99. We started DK Vine, and obviously Donkey Kong 64 was coming out that November. So Jet Force Gemini came out barely a month before DK64. So historically, obviously, I was looking more towards DK64. As soon as that was announced, Jet Force Gemini was just kind of this other game I was sort of following, but as Chad got it first, I asked for it for Christmas. Obviously, I got DK64 for my birthday that November 22nd.
Yeah.
But Yeah, I think Chad, you figured out that no, there's no Donkey Kong Universe connections to the game. I still wanted it because it was a Rare game and Rare made kick-ass games. So I remember Christmas Day 1999, I played Jet Force Gemini pretty heavily, and I liked it, but the thing that I realized was this game is brutal. This is a hard game. And I played it, and then I was still playing Donkey Kong 64 at the time. I hadn't beaten it. I was taking my time with that. So I was kind of switching off back and forth, but ultimately I was going more towards Donkey Kong 64. And then other games came out that I had to cover on DK Vine because we had to cover Mario Party 2 and some other classic games of that era. And eventually I just never finished the game. And I hit that age then where I stopped playing video games, and the GameCube came out, and I just never got around to it. And it's one of my great shames to this day that I've never finished Jet Force Gemini.
Did you at least get through the main campaign until?
Nope.
No.
Wow.
I did not. And
how far did you get? Did you ever play as Vela? Or
I don't
Lupus?
even remember. I don't remember.
Oh Jesus.
I know. So this is going to be educational for me as well as entertaining, and I hope I'm just not the third wheel here because I want to know more about this game. You guys are always raving about it, and it feels like this great party that I was invited to, but I had other plans that day.
Okay, well that's you, but let's talk to someone a little more familiar with the game itself. Alastair, how did you first become aware of the game and ramp up your obviously justified anticipation for it?
Well, look, I was very much in the height of Rare fandom. I didn't have much in the way of, how would we put this, friends in grade 9. Not my favourite year, all things considered, but look, I was greatly looking forward to this game. I was eagerly anticipating it, lapping up every bit of media. And my birthday was coming up on the November following its release. So I was hinting very, very strongly to my parents. Not something I generally do. Normally happy to go with the flow. Normally happy to appreciate the surprise. But this time, it was Jet Force Gemini or nothing. I hinted so strongly. So when we were all shopping together, I was looking around the stores, trying to find which stores stocked it, so I could point people in the right direction. And hit an endless series of dead ends. I'd walk up to a store clerk. Do you have Jet Force Gemini? And she'd just give this sympathetic smile and say, "Is that one of those Star Wars games?"
No.
Yeah, a lot of that. We went home. I didn't know if we had a copy of Jet Force Gemini in our car. I was fretting with anticipation. And such was my anticipation that I vividly remember every detail about what was on TV that night. It was the finale to Hey Hey It's Saturday, which was kind of our... I can't think of a comparable thing. It was a weekly variety show.
Was this a spinoff of Hey Dad?
Saturday Night Live, maybe?
Yeah, in terms of a fixture that's very mediocre. But people sort of put up
definitely Saturday Night Live, yeah.
Yeah, but it was more like interviews, musical guests, a terrible talent show component, and the final episode that night was airing. But I was just fretting with anticipation. I not even the final Hey Hey It's Saturday could... I must say, this is a show that was co-hosted for the bulk of its run by an ostrich puppet named Ozzy.
Okay, that's where Ozzy Ben drew his name from.
Yeah.
Obviously a big Espresso fan then.
Yeah.
That's how he came to write for us.
I had the worst sleepless night I can remember of my childhood. The only
this is agonizing, Alastair. This is like this is the worst birthday ever so far.
It's actually just a terribly told story. But the sleeplessness was just so much.
So
tossing and turning.
you couldn't tell your family, I want Jet Force Gemini for my birthday. Done.
I just said I was very much looking forward to it. We were all very polite.
Oh my!
Okay. So was this the one thing you wanted of that birthday?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
And I woke up the
there
next
was
morning.
nothing else on your mind.
There was nothing else on my mind.
Not even intercourse.
This was grade 9.
Right.
Yes, I woke up the next morning. I saw the familiar Nintendo 64 box. Waited agonizingly for the rest of my family to wake up so we could open presents.
Oh, you mean like the dimensions of that box?
Yes, yes.
In wrapping paper?
It was the what I perceived as at the time as the grown-up version of the Lego box, which was the childhood staple. You'd shake the box and you'd hear the familiar rattle. And as I went into teenage years, it turned into the annual Nintendo 64 box.
The familiar rattle of Lee Loveday's words in the instruction booklet.
Yes, and yes, I've really stretched this out a long time, haven't I? Long story short, it was Jet Force Gemini, and I devoured that game.
That's beautiful.
The next 2 weeks were all about Jet Force Gemini.
For my part, I have sort of a prolonged awareness of Jet Force. I mean, I knew about it as soon as it was announced, especially when the characters were their younger versions. And
that's something that's important to talk about too in a little bit about how they sexified the characters.
They did a little bit. They aged them up, and the game got a T rating, and a much deserved one after having played it again with my modern eyes. Like,
good lord.
Vela's skirt is essentially non-existent. The whole game is an upskirt. But at any rate, I'm glad she is older and more developed. But that makes it slightly less creepy. But the game itself was promoted by Nintendo Power in the States via this joint DK64 Jet Force Gemini videotape.
Oh, that's right. Jet Force Gemini was part of that awful videotape.
Yeah, that horrible video with the masturbating host. He basically held his hands below the desk the entire video and just sort of kept like moving around. And the joke was, because we were, ninth graders, was that, he's jacking off under the table. But what I remember of that video was that they paired...
Now, was the masturbating host also the pay guy from 5 years earlier?
I feel like he was. I feel like he's the same guy with a haircut.
He sold out. He got a haircut. He started working for the man. Yeah,
gained a little weight. And
are you sure about this, Chad?
I'm not.
You would not stake your journalistic reputation on this.
No. But I would invite anyone who has done an expert level deconstruction of Paul McCartney's facial structure to compare the two. And I will adhere to whatever your conclusions may draw.
Which is why we all agree he's two separate guys, right?
Of course. But anyway, in this video, they paired up the very early Jet Force Gemini footage, and even the boss, Fetbub, his eyeballs are missing. So it's like this empty void when they show that clip of the boss. But they paired it with this music that never appeared in the game, but
it's like this electronic music, isn't it?
Dun 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 dun. And by the way, starting right now, I'm going to play this music as a bed because it really is central to what this game did to me. That music got under my skin in such a way that I was so looking forward to it because it was this sci-fi space adventure, and I thought it was part of I thought it was the soundtrack as done by Robin Beanland, and we'll touch on his amazing score in a bit, but it wasn't anywhere in the game. And what I discovered later is that it was I saw the song pop up again in a Campbell's soup commercial. And I was like, oh my god, that's the song.
Is it the one where the boy's a snowman, but he eats this Campbell's soup and the snow melts?
No. It was one where an NFL player needed to play well at the next game, and his mother cooked him some Campbell's soup. And they played this...
his mother's hanging around the locker room.
Right, and they played this song. And of course, there's no way for... This is the internet by this point, probably 2002, 2003. there's no way for me to track this down.
But
YouTube didn't exist, you know?
This sounds like stock music that companies buy and then can use freely.
Right. Well, here's where it led me. I then saw, I was living in Houston at the time. I was still in high school. There was a local car commercial that I knew was edited by a Houston commercial company. And so I called the car dealership. I said, "Who made your commercial?" They referred me to this local ad agency. I called them. I said, "What did you use?" And they told me the Network Music Library. So I looked that up, and I scoured the Network Music Library, only to discover that they lied to me. It was not from the Network Music Library. In fact, this Houston car dealership ad agency that was contracted illegally used a piece of music from NFL films.
Oh.
And eventually I found it. I just stumbled on it randomly on YouTube, probably 1997 or 98. I found this music.
Wait, on YouTube? YouTube didn't exist back then.
No, 97. I'm sorry, 2007 or 2008.
Okay.
Yes.
Your story checks out now.
A decade later. Yeah. I certainly didn't stumble on it pre-Jet Force. 07 or 08.
You found it on a site Paul McCartney made mashed potatoes for.
That's right.
Whatever site that was.
And I just thought, how exciting is this on the internet? No, it was like, oh my God, this is the song. This is the song. The song you're listening to now. And to me, this song is part of the Jet Force Gemini soundtrack. It is just everything that a spacefaring adventure should be, and it just warms every cockle of my heart, and I fucking love it. And that's what hooked me, aside from the visuals, was this song and the promise that it made. And then I got the game, and I just even before that, I remember the Walmart in my neighborhood had a demo in probably August or September. A Nintendo 64 demo that had Jet Force Gemini.
Back when Walmarts had demos of console games.
Yes, and the Walmart was it was a 2-mile bike ride from my house. But I remember on probably every day for about 2 weeks, I would get off the bus from the high school, ride my bike to the Walmart, and play Jet Force Gemini until someone kicked me off, like every single night. And then eventually, I got the game and just absolutely loved it. I don't know why I decided that Jet Force Gemini was going to be like my favorite non-DKU game. Obviously,
when did you get the game?
it's-
Because I'm trying to place this on the chronological timeline of DK Vine. Did you get it upon release?
Yes, everything that I'm talking about happened in the first 2 months of DK Vine's existence.
So you got it October 11th. Okay.
Launch. Obviously.
I must say I find it very interesting that, Chad, you and I both decided that this would be an amazing game before we picked it up, which perhaps helped us both push past the difficulty curve that seemed to have put a lot of people off.
Yeah, I think so. And it's strange. Rare, especially when they were called Ultimate, were notorious for difficult games. And I think more than any other game in their modern output, this game embodied that spirit.
I must also say that I prefer your story over mine. But if you like, I can give you more details on the finale of Hey Hey It's Saturday. In fact, did you know that I lie, it did actually come back a few years later for a couple of one-off specials, in one of which Harry Connick Jr. got incredibly offended. They brought back a variety act that was a big hit on the show in the 80s, in which people impersonated the Jackson 5 in blackface.
Oh my.
With the exception of Michael, who was in whiteface.
I'm just happy that NFL Films can be scoring that story, Alastair. But so that's my story. That's how I got into Jet Force, and I loved every fucking minute of it.
I'm envious of you two because, like I said, my attention was almost solely on DK64 at this point, with enough of an eye kept on Jet Force Gemini so I could learn the important details. But yeah, I really missed out on the hype train. I feel like my wires got crossed here.
Well, Hyle, it's never too late.
That's right. You do own a Nintendo 64, correct?
It's somewhere in my parents' attic, yes.
Go get it. Go back to Penn Laird.
Oh, yeah, there's cobwebs up there, though, and I had to get a shower afterwards.
There's no excuse. We're talking about Jet Force Gemini.
Well, if Microsoft would put it on their Xbox Live Arcade, maybe. Is it on Xbox Live Arcade? It was never put on Xbox Live Arcade.
No, just Perfect Dark and Banjo.
I would literally kill a man. And you gentlemen know how polite I am. I would literally choke the life out of a man to get that on Virtual Console or Xbox Live or anything.
It would have to be
Acknowledgement
Xbox
that this was a
Live,
game that existed.
Yeah, you know that parable of the person who, would push a button if someone in the world died? Alastair would take a far more active approach.
Only for Jet Force Gemini, I must stress that.
Right.
It is the one thing that works around my pacifism.
Well, okay. Well, that being said, I want to know, because obviously you guys are more intimately familiar with this game, which I basically gave up on and missed out on the joy. So what makes Jet Force Gemini so special? I want you to explain it to me, quantify it for me. Take the intangible qualities that charms you so much and reduce them to cold mathematics. So why don't we talk about the characters? Because I feel like that's what would interest me the most is the characters of the game are kind of like the gateway to the soul of the game, in my opinion. And Rare is, at least in our circle, notorious for creating just such memorable characters. Now, there's I know the main trinity, the Juno, Vela, and Lupus. And
right.
Now Juno and Vela, they did start off as kind of like these
anime-styled, big-eyed
chibi
twins.
styled, like little like Astro Boy type children.
Yeah.
And then there was a lot of
highly sexualized Astro Boy children, which is
I remember there was a lot of criticism, not for the sexualized aspect, but for how cutesy the game looked.
Yeah, and that's another indication of the era in which this game came out, is that probably to the detriment of the area, to the detriment of the era, rather.
Error.
To the error of the era. We were not as aware of the ugly shorthand that over-sexualization of women was permeating the society, and so it wasn't so much.
It was the late '90s, so
right.
Yeah, no.
It wasn't so much an issue of, oh my God, this character is wearing nothing. It was a matter of, this game is too cute.
Right, this child is wearing nothing. Well, I remember, and this was, of course, the time when Conker would have been taken back behind the barn and retooled into Bad Fur Day. And so Rare was kind of making a conscious effort to be like, oh, yeah, there's cute, but then there's too cute. And I think they realized maybe Jet Force Gemini would hold more wide appeal if the characters looked more like teenagers or adults rather than 8-year-olds. And so, yeah, they had that transformation, which I remember was a big deal when it happened, at least, again, in our circles.
Yeah, although that did not stop the original younger models of the characters to make an appearance, A, as cheat codes. You could transform your characters into the younger versions, and B, in the 100% ending cinema of the game, you get to see Child Vela running around as if she's an NPC.
Oh,
That's right.
Yeah.
So like multiple Donkey Kongs Jr.
Yeah. Well, it's just another. It's another
Time
girl.
travel.
It's another girl on Earth who has blue pigtails. That's all.
All right. So no holograms, no time travel.
Oh, there are plenty of holograms in the game, but not in that case.
Okay. All right. Well, talk to me. Like Juno, Vela, and Lupus, they've always kind of been blank slates for me. I've never really gotten a read on their characters. Do they have personalities? Like what? Explain them to me.
I think a lot of it comes across in simply the gameplay, because these are people who casually run through and cause a lot of carnage. They are very much badasses.
Right. And they do have their own distinct abilities. Vela, in particular, I believe she was the one who could swim, right?
Yep. Juno had his God, what was Juno's superpower?
Oh, couldn't he like run and fire or something? There was like lava could not.
Yeah.
I don't remember what Juno could do. Eventually, they all get jetpacks. but yeah, I mean, that's not really much in the way of characterization. That's just, gating off elements of the game.
Well, there is a lovely sense of family bond between them. Just on account of them being characters together, having to rescue one another.
Yeah, in the opening cinema, basically the Jet Force Gemini's spaceship is under siege by Mizar's drones, and there's an explosion. Juno gets knocked to the side, and Vela and Lupus are near the escape transporters, and they look back at him, and he basically waves them on, says, "Get out of here." There's that bond that exists, and they're twins, obviously. Hopefully not like Lannister caliber twins, but
I get that reference.
Yeah. But yeah, there's definitely this familial touch to it, but
hopefully not like the Lannisters.
But I would say probably Juno, Vela, and to a lesser extent Lupus are the least interesting characters in the game.
Now, you said that they're from Earth. You mentioned Earth a couple times. Like, what is the relation to Earth? Is this in the future? Is this?
Yeah. So the game includes several references to a Federation, a la Star Trek. And then the ending of the game involves saving Earth. So presumably the Federation, of which Jet Force is a subset, and Jet Force Gemini is a specific unit of the Jet Force, which is part of the Federation, are all from Earth.
Okay. All right. That was never clear to me, maybe because I didn't play deep enough into the game. Where does this game take place? Is this like Star Wars where they're humans in another galaxy with no relation to us? So that helps. Okay, so if they're the least interesting characters, let's talk about the more interesting characters, the side characters, the NPCs, the ones who get the plot moving along. So I know that there's a character named Floyd, because he's been referenced numerous times. He's a robot, is he not?
Floyd the droid.
Yeah, Floyd the droid. His signature quote from Scribes anyway is "rar."
This is purely a reader contribution. Somebody just suggested that he said "rar."
Yeah.
With no real stimulus whatsoever. It was just a non sequitur that stuck.
Yeah, Floyd says "rar."
A-R.
So Floyd was basically a very clever way for Rare to introduce a second player mechanic into the game. Basically, he's in the third stage that you play as Juno, the aforementioned Toferet. There's kind of a side mission where you could collect the scattered robot parts of Floyd, and he's just basically a drone. Before drones were a thing we need be concerned about.
Back when we called drones toy helicopters.
Right.
Back before we had to invent a whole new term for them. Yeah.
Yes. So Juno was not getting his Amazon packages delivered on time.
Radio Shack.
Yeah, and he decided to assemble Floyd. And once you've done that, the second player it essentially gives them an aiming reticle on the screen that they can use to assist the first player in shooting things. But there were also several side missions where you could play as Floyd in a first-person view, and ultimately the final mission of the game had you play as Floyd. But yeah, he's just a robot called Floyd.
Okay. Now, you mentioned Mizar several times. Talk to me about Mizar.
Yeah. Alastair?
He's a villain. I don't know how much to say without ruining the ending.
Yeah, that's difficult.
He's a generic big bad, essentially.
Right. And
which is odd, because Rare, like, all their big bads were hardly generic. They always infuse so much personality into the villains.
Yeah, so it was a bit anomalous that this was just a generic bad guy with a generic bad guy name, like like Miser. I get it.
A giant
very Star
insectile
Warsy
thing.
Yeah. He might as well have been called like Darth Mizar.
Yeah.
And he was just a big mantis-looking thing, and that's about it. You're told at the beginning of the game that that he commands drones, and there are things called Mizar tokens, and that's about it. And then you're introduced to, on Goldwood, this whole species of tribals, which are very key to the game.
Now, for lazy shorthand, we can just call them Ewoks.
Yeah,
See,
basically.
I always took them to be like the Jinjos of the game.
They're the Jinjos if the Jinjos were 100% required to collect to beat the game. And also if you could shoot the Jinjos' heads off and collect them. Because that was another perverse bit of the sense of humor of this game, was the fact that as you're going through, all the bad guys, you could do headshots and their heads would tumble off and you collect them, which is counted. But you could also do the same thing for the tribals.
Now, the best thing I remember from that is, that, correct me if I'm wrong, Chad, but that did not serve any purpose, did it? It was purely for counting. Not
one purpose. Yeah, you could go to your stat screen and look at how many tribal heads you had collected, but it didn't do a damn thing.
Now, does that like screw up things if you kill a tribal instead of?
Oh my, yes.
Yeah. So basically, to 100% the game, to get to the final stage, basically at the end of the main campaign, you're told that you need to go back and collect all the tribals to get a final spaceship part to chase Mizar. But in order to get that spaceship part, you have to get all the tribals. But the thing is, they're so shootable. You go through the game like just wanting to shoot them in the head, but you have to collect every single one of them, and of course you can replay stages.
Okay, so it's not like you could permanently screw up a game file.
No.
That was where my fear was. I remember that being a conscious fear when I realized you could shoot them when I played the game, and that kind of, I think, made me pause and want to like step away from the game until I figured out if I was screwing things up or not.
Not only can you shoot them, but there are some of Mizar's drones that will kill them themselves. I remember there's this one, the blue drones are like the foot soldiers, the green ones are the snipers. There's a black drone that will run around killing all the tribals that are in that area unless you kill him first.
Yeah. Now, if you can imagine stepping into a room filled with drones, aerial drones, gigantic ants shooting at you, throwing grenades at you. You just need to run. You need to start shooting and fast. Right. And in the middle of this carnage of smoke, of explosions, of splatter, and that's something we haven't gotten into yet. There is a lot of splatter. Green alien blood splatters everywhere with every death.
With fantastic sound effects, too.
Oh, it is delightfully brutal. In a grotesque, cartoonish way. And in the middle of this carnage, you just see this little teddy bear see you and just run towards you through the field of fire. Actively run towards you. Yeah! You need to pick him up as soon as possible, or else you're going to need to replay that stage. And there is a genuine sense of danger to it. For all the criticism of that gameplay mechanic, that when that scene plays out procedurally, it is such a thrill to actually rescue one of these things.
Yeah, and they make this neat little like a laser noise as they beam away, but that is the most satisfying noise that you will hear, especially when you'll run across like a clump of tribals. That it's like, and they're not all identical. There are like female, male ones, elderly, there are children, and so when you get to like a family unit of tribals, you're like, oh, thank God, there are 3 of them.
I have to say, that sounds really stressful and somewhat frustrating that they could so easily be killed by your hand.
In grade 9,
alone...
we had a bit more time to replay stages. That's probably the biggest obstacle to approaching it today.
Right. There's just too much going on as an adult. But back then...
Yeah, in the age of Rayman Origins, where you can just restart a room or sequence instantly... The idea of replaying a level because a tribal got killed at the end is, can't really mince words there. It's an obstacle.
Here's the thing. I don't think that kids today would have the patience for that.
I don't necessarily want to make this a generational thing because I think
No, I'm not saying, I'm not saying that, but I think that's I don't know. I think like in the era of speed runs and whatnot, there's a lot less patience for the really marathon, like I'm gonna do this until I perfect it kind of gaming. That
I disagree. I think
Really?
the audience is always there. It's just maybe one audience is more vocal than the other. But I reject the idea that everyone has lost patience for things. I just think that perhaps.
Because now we have the smartphones and the MTV and the Pepsi Cola
and the beeping and the bopping and the hipping and the hopping. I don't think that that's a real phenomenon. I think that. Go ahead.
So I'm just thinking of the XKCD strip that summarizes the last 200 years of people talking about the increasing pace of modern life. Also, a reminder of the possibly apocryphal quote, supposedly from Cicero, saying that children these days have no patience, they don't listen to their elders, and everybody's writing a book.
Yeah, I remember reading a thing about there was a famous calligrapher that was basically talking about how the printing press was going to destroy the minds of humanity. So. Yeah, it's progress, but I still think if Jet Force Gemini came out today and was obviously, had more polished visuals and a little more polished controls, I think that there would be an audience for it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Was there much of an audience for it back then? Because I don't know how well the game sold.
It was overshadowed.
Yeah.
By a lot
definitely
of
was.
things.
Yeah, it was overshadowed for me, and I'm a huge Rare fan, and it just completely blew by me and kind of passed me by.
Right.
Well, real quick, let's touch upon some other characters. I do know there's a character named Jeff.
King Jeff.
King Jeff. Not my friend Jeff, but let's talk about Jeff, because you guys constantly reference this character Jeff.
King Jeff.
King Jeff. I'm sorry.
And Barry.
That's right. King Jeff is the leader of the tribals. He's not the first NPC you're introduced to, though. When you land on Goldwood, you meet this guy named Magnus, who's basically a green Yoda. And that's all he is. He's Yoda. And he teaches you...
Thank God, I thought he was a very large condom at first.
he tells you how to shoot things, and then he shows up again in the finale. But he kind of disappears the narrative. Then you go to a hut that's owned by Jeff, King Jeff, and King Jeff allows you, and this was cool. I replayed it the other night, and you go talk to King Jeff, and he says, "I have a time warp that you can watch the invasion on," and you can either say, like, "Nice to meet you," or "Let's watch the invasion." But it wasn't a cutscene. It was him warping time so that you could observe those actual events as they happened.
That's pretty cool. That's a cool touch.
Yeah. So Jeff has those powers, and King Jeff let you watch the invasion.
And I love that this character is sort of played, as far as I can remember, played completely straight. He just has a ridiculous name.
Yeah. He's a tribal. And he wears like a headdress of... his headdress was like a killed drone. He had like a dead ant on his head.
I remember that now, yeah.
Yeah, so he's like a pretty hardcore tribal. But yeah, he's played totally straight. The names are Floyd, Jeff, Barry, like just normal names. Barry is not a character that we meet until the very end of the game, and we'll get to that in a little bit. There are also the bosses, of course, Fetbub, Lurg, the Mechanids. They are just kind of generic insectoid bosses that each of the main three characters fights, and of course you fight Mizar. And then Alastair, do you remember Diamond Geezer?
I remember one line from Diamond Geezer.
the one that was that was preserved in Mayamuki Roketo Dan.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Now,
all right, Tosh, what can I do for you?
Haha.
So now I know where that's from. Who's the Diamond Geezer?
Diamond Geezer was a robot that sold you weapon refills and upgrades and health refills and upgrades, and he was on maybe like 3 stages. And his name was Diamond Geezer, and whenever you would walk up to him, he would say, "All right, Tosh, what can I do for you? Haha."
What?
No, what can I do you for?
Oh,
yeah.
Wow, okay.
All right, Tosh, what can I do you for? Haha.
Wow, that's what the hell is that in reference to?
I don't know, but I love that it's in the game. And he's not like a robot, like a C-3PO kind of thing. He's a la Floyd. He's just like a floating machine box. He's not even anthropomorphic. He's just a robot thing called Diamond Geezer.
That's so weird.
Keeping with the great rare tradition of just giving shop owners ridiculous accents and personalities.
Oh yeah, you pay this much.
I would have loved to have heard a voice acted Diamond Geezer.
All right, Tosh, what can I do you for?
That's if you put in the Ansys Pants cheat code, and then you go
Right,
talk
right.
to Diamond Geezer, yeah.
And then he just starts yelling, "I love you!"
Oh, smelly!
Medium.
My brain hurts!
Hard.
Smile, baby!
Oh, we're big It's Mr. Pants fans here at the
We're
Kongversation.
like the only ones. Like, as the tagline says, DK Vine, home of the 4 people who beat Muddle Mode. Maybe it's 3, I don't know.
Right.
Well, at least 3 of them are right here.
Now, Chad, you never beat Muddle Mode, did you?
I never did, no.
Yeah.
I'm ashamed to say.
Alistair?
Actually, I may not have.
I win.
What do you win?
Define win.
It means at least I played a rare game to completion that you guys didn't.
Fair enough.
How's Donkey Konga 2 coming along?
That's not a rare game, Alistair. Don't bring it up.
Oh, sorry.
So, okay, so that's some of the characters, but
Right.
we mentioned the lava world. I'm kind of curious because Rare is also really good at creating memorable locations, and this being a intergalactic hopping game, I'm sure there are a lot of memorable worlds and environments. So, you guys want to go through some of them really quick?
Well, they're very genre appropriate, aren't they? They do fit archetypes. I would say they are memorably named locations.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we discussed Goldwood, which is where Juno is first spat out, but you sort of go between a variety of planets and planetoids and space stations, and ships that have been either taken over by the drones or drone holdfasts themselves that you are invading. But yeah, they all have very memorable names and memorable soundtracks. Like, of course, Juno starts off at Goldwood and then goes to the SS Anubis and then winds up on the planet, which is a ship, and then winds up on the planet Tofrit. Vela, I don't remember exactly what her progression is, but there's a stage called Ikor, which is like the home base of the drones. You wind up on Mizar's Palace. There's
sorry.
No, I was going to say one of my favorites that I think you accessed later in the game was the Water Ruin.
Oh yeah, that was lovely.
Just beautiful, and like all of these stages were like so Robin Beanland did the soundtrack,
and how?
Yeah, yes, and how he like every one of these stages was just it was its own environment and I loved that the soundtrack was played totally straight. It was played as an epic space opera while you had characters like Jeff and Floyd.
Yeah, it tells you that it's a big deal. Everything about the soundtrack is just so space operatic and, it's such an overused word, epic. It is large scale, it is bombastic, it is thematically appropriate to every location, but it plays it straight as this sci-fi horror film, this sci-fi horror adventure. And it just tells you every step of the way that what you are doing is a big deal.
It's reminding me a little bit of Starship Troopers.
Well, there was an interview. I can't remember who it was on the team, but after the game came out, basically said that every like space thing in pop culture up to that point kind of informed the game, including Starship Troopers, the Paul Verhoeven movie. Star Wars, Star Trek, Starship Troopers, Independence Day. Like they drew inspiration from everything that was out there, and you can kind of see the game as like a pastiche of pop culture space with Rare's sense of humor as the through line.
And
Very
quite a
British
unique
space
combination
opera.
too, despite relying on soundtrack archetypes, because you got the sort of horror organs, I guess, sneaking in the sort of ambient drones. You've got
especially with the like the derelict space station.
Yeah,
You remember that one? That was creepy too, because there's really not any baddies on that stage, but like you'll go into a room and there would just be like a frayed electrical wire shooting off sparks, and it makes you jump. And then it's
and there are periods where it uses silence to terrific effect.
So kind of shades of Alien there a little bit too.
yeah, absolutely, yeah. I think they did cite some of Ridley Scott's early work as an inspiration.
Yeah, there are face huggers in the air duct. Essentially, you've definitely got Alien and Aliens.
Well, they really need to make a sequel so they can reference Prometheus.
Alistair, did you have a favorite stage? I mean, I know I glossed over, like, there's Eshibone, there's Rith Essa, there's all kinds
Those
of
are
stuff.
weird stage names, by the way.
Essa? Where could they have come from? It's very fitting, because the stage Torfrit, the swampy level, there's something about that name that just sounds so gaseous and wet and damp.
So that's another thing, that there were 3 of the stage names that it came out after the game was released, obviously after it got through the ESRB, that they were basically anagrams of obscene phrases. Rith Essa.
Shocking.
Yeah. This is Rare we're talking about. Rith Essa, shit arse, or arse shit, whichever you would prefer.
Shit arse is funnier to me for some reason.
And this was a period in which Scribes, the Rare Letters page, was engaged in a heated debate between US and UK writers over the correct spelling of arse.
Yeah, and I think that ultimately ARSE was codified by Banjo-Tooie's bonus target thing in Mayahem Temple.
Not to mention the AR-53 in Perfect Dark.
Oh, that's right.
They just really rubbed it in every chance they got. It was wonderful.
This was also really when us in the Americas were really first exposed to ARSE as a spelling of, and basically, we go overboard with it. Arse. When, it's ass,
It's not a pirate phrase, it's us.
Yeah. But we arse, yeah.
And the aforementioned...
We were kind of obsessed with it.
Yeah.
The aforementioned Torfrit, the wet gaseous Torfrit, was wet fart.
Right. And I only discovered this today. There was a stage called Eshibone, which was Lupus's final stage. It was the lava world that I mentioned, but it takes place entirely within a giant grub. So you go into his mouth, do the entire stage, a very atypically linear one, and then before fighting the bosses, you get squirted out that giant grubworm's butthole. But Eshibone is an anagram for what I thought was obscene, eh? But it's actually knob cheese. So it's far. I thought it was a very metatextual commentary on the anagrams, but no, it's just knob cheese.
Knob cheese, yeah.
You could just imagine somewhere they're in that barn, just rubbing their hands together, going, "Oh boy."
Eshibone, we got a winner here.
Really, that sums up life in a nutshell. You think there's something really profound behind it, but in the end, all you have is your knob cheese. Well, I'm glad you brought this up because you were talking about like the horror elements, how it's kind of played straight. And I was like, well, this is Rare we're talking about. I mean, in every Rare game, there's kind of a sense of humor that's kind of a little bit off the beaten track, especially with Nintendo. It's more cheeky and mischievous than you normally got with Nintendo.
Right.
And,
well, we talked about the way that they had the tribal heads that you could collect, but like even in the weaponry, there were elements that there was one. There were tons of weapons in the game. There was the plasma shotgun, the tri-rocket launcher, the machine gun, the normal plasma rifle, but there was also fish food that was a weapon, and all it did was throw out pellets of fish food. And if you happened to be near a pond that had fish, they would come up and eat it.
Now, I don't even remember it working in that sense. I'm not sure it even fed the fish.
Did it not? I remember going to ponds of fish like on Goldwood and trying to feed them, but I can't corroborate that either.
Was this a like commonly found item in the game?
No, you find it in the first level, and you're stuck with it, and that's it. It was optional too. You could have easily not picked it up.
I remember the fish food. I remember that because I remember trying to do stuff with
Right. It's like you have, at that point you have like the machine gun, the plasma rifle, and fish food. And
that's where I started getting frustrated with the game. Like, I don't know what I'm doing.
And the way that the game mechanics works is like you hit A and B to cycle through your weapons, either forward or backward. And
now imagine being in the middle of a firefight, desperately trying to find that rocket launcher you need.
Right, and they go in, like, your weapons go in order of severity, basically. So like it's plasma rifle, machine gun, it's like plasma gun, machine gun, plasma rifle, rocket launcher, fish food. So you're cycling through, and then you wind up throwing little balls of gefilte fish.
Often accidentally.
Fat Bob, you're right.
While a traveler is running towards you in the middle of a firefight.
And it does nothing. It does
Robert
nothing.
It does nothing in the entire
bombastic
game?
score is belting out around you. And you're stuck throwing fish food.
No,
so like
it really does nothing in the entire game. Like,
actually, there is one dubiously useful moment where you can use it to practical effect. There is an air duct section where there are alien-style face huggers. Little things scampering towards you. You can actually throw those, and it does divert them. However, in the time it would take you to do that, you could have easily picked out a weapon and shot them, or simply run past them unharmed. Like, there's no reason to choose that over a more practical option.
There were rumors that fish food was the key to beating Mizar, who was one of the most notoriously difficult bosses of video gamedom, especially of the N64 era. But alas, no, it does nothing.
Can you
Guys,
imagine after...
Are we sure? Sorry, Alastair, but are we sure? This is very important, or else I wouldn't have interrupted you. Are we sure that this isn't a clue that Royston's in the game?
I'm pretty sure.
You'd almost think that they were unaware of your arbitrary universe rules.
What if we sprinkle fish food in like every square inch of the game, and maybe Royston will then appear?
Hyle, I invite you to go to your parents' attic, get the game, and try it yourself.
Did you have a limited amount of fish food, or was it like an infinite supply?
Oh, I don't recall that, because every other weapon in the game
it was infinite. Yes.
Yeah, you had limited ammo. Yeah, you're right. It was the one infinite thing.
Well, that's kind of rare.
Can you just imagine if it ended, after this notoriously difficult final boss?
Right.
He's mortally wounded. He falls backward into a pool of water, let's say. And there happen to be piranhas around, and you just need some way to get their attention.
Yeah, the asteroid piranhas, let's say.
That would have been great. And that would have been the kind of thing Rare would have done. So I could see why all options would have been on a table when
you can
theorizing.
Definitely imagine it.
Yeah.
Right. There was also this. Speaking of the sense of humor of the game, I mentioned that Ichor was the drone base of operations that you sort of invade, and there's a part where no matter what character you're playing as, you can basically transform yourself into a drone, which was really cool because you're basically playing as an ant character with all of your weaponry. But on Ikor, there's a recreation area of this militaristic drone base that's basically like a rave nightclub.
Which Rare Bug Fun Club, I believe it was called.
Yes, the Big Bug Fun Club.
Which Rare was kind of keen on at the time because, you know, they snuck one in Conker's Bad Fur Day. It was definitely an archetype that they were trying to make legitimate.
Right,
the
but
nightclub.
But this one was a little more absurd because basically all of these like faceless drones that you have, as Alastair put it, have been splattering the entire game. All of a sudden you see them disco dance, just like cutting loose, and there's a jukebox and you can play one of three songs that when I ripped the soundtrack originally. There are lines of dialogue that I repurposed to name the tracks. One was Insect Massive, because someone said big up the Insect Massive. Yeah, anyway, there are three songs that you can play on the jukebox, and like the DJ is one of the giant hulking purple like rocket launcher bugs. And of course you can decide to obliterate every drone inside the club and just massacre them all if you so choose. Also in that club was your first introduction to a little side plot element called Jeff and Barry Racing.
Yes, it was a little arcade cabinet inside the Big Bug Fun Club.
Right. And defunct, sitting next to it, was Jeff and Barry Racing 2. Which is kind of the central element of the entire game's plot.
So Jeff and Barry Racing, this was actually an arcade game you could play?
Yes.
Yeah.
So it was modeled off RC Pro-Am, wasn't it?
Yeah, the NES game that the Stamper Brothers created, which I think there was a
top-down racer.
Yeah, and the version in Jet Force Gemini was, I don't know how much of a carbon copy it was, but I really enjoyed playing it.
Yeah, it was fun.
And actually, RC Pro-Am, didn't that predate Super Mario Kart?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So a lot of the elements from Super Mario Kart actually debuted in RC Pro-Am. Like, I remember, like, oil slicks you could spin out on, and there's definitely, like, the mischievous racing was definitely predated Super Mario Kart.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. The only difference being that it was top-down rather than Mode 7.
Well, of course, it was the NES, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, next to that was Jeff and Barry Racing 2, which no amount of Mizar tokens would allow you to access, and we found out why later on. Okay,
well, do you want to explain this ending that you've been building up?
Sure. Well, first off, before we get to the ending, which to me is like the ultimate piss take of the entire game, there are a few other things we should touch on, like the Specialist magazine.
Oh yes, that's all it's called. I believe it's in inverted commas too. One of the items you need to collect on a side quest is a Specialist magazine for a very lonely creature in the swamps. Just says he needs a bit of company, a bit of entertainment to pass the time. Can you find me my Specialist magazine? Now, when you receive it, he has a quote. He just says, "Oh, thank you." Oh wait, no. I'm getting mixed up. There was another bit of innuendo in the game where you light someone's fireplace, and he says, my yin and yang are warming up nicely."
Oh yes, that's right.
This was the same guy, wasn't it? First you light his fireplace, then you need to get him a bit warmer by finding him his magazine.
He was in Toffret.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And before starting this podcast, I just told my brother that I'd be in this room, not to interrupt, explain what I'd be doing. So, do you remember Jet Force Gemini? And his eyes just lit up. He goes, my yin and yang are warming up nicely. That is the enduring legacy for Anthony Craig of Jet Force Gemini. So props to the writers.
That's fantastic. So yeah, we got the Specialist magazine, the heads. the Ichor nightclub, the Big Bug Fun Club, the anagrams, but it all led up to...
Sorry, one other thing. I've not verified this personally. I've only heard it after the fact, but apparently you returned to this place after dropping off the Specialist magazine. I heard, and this sounds like some sort of dodgy school rumor, someone might be able to verify this, that he was missing, but you found a strange white stain in the corner of the room that was not there before.
No way.
I am very dubious of that. I think
that sounds like the rumor that there's a giant penis in Banjo-Tooie that's pulling out of an asshole, and the ejaculate is sprinkling from the tip.
Yeah, there's no way that's real.
Ridiculous, Alastair.
Yeah, well, it would actually, honestly, it would kind of lessen the joke for me if they decided to spell it out like that.
Yeah, I sort of agree. I think that it's funnier if if that's where it's left off, that he's doing this sort of vague joke, but you don't want to put too fine a point on it.
I mean, a Specialist magazine could be anything.
Right, exactly. He's just...
Nintendo Power was a Specialist magazine.
It could be landscaping. Perhaps he wants to improve his swamp.
So whoever told me that in the #RareNet chat room in 1999, I do hope you are having a laugh.
So it all led up to the final twist ending. So as we said, you have to collect every single tribal to get the one final spaceship part that King Jeff is, through the whole game, building a spaceship that will allow you to chase down the asteroid that Mizar is piloting to crash into Earth. And the only way to complete this spaceship is to collect all the tribals, because apparently King Jeff is holding the fate of Earth hostage. So once you do that, which is one of the most restrictive gates to completion of any video game ever.
One that critics hated.
Yes. Like honestly, I would be shocked if the number of end-game players that 100%ed this were above 10,000. I would be shocked.
And it's nice, and tragic as that is, it is nice to feel like you're in this little league of your own.
Yeah. It's a very small club of people that understand the true significance of Jeff and Barry Racing 2.
Now, I must say, I quite enjoyed having to revisit these stages for all the frustrations of tribal collecting, because essentially each player starts the game in their own separate place with 3 levels to themselves, and you essentially meet in the middle. Your suits get upgraded once you beat Mizar the first time.
Yeah.
And this might bear some mentioning. Because, Juno gets a jetpack, Vela gets like a costume upgrade as well, and Lupus becomes a tank.
That's right. Yeah.
A tank/hovercraft with a dog's head poking out.
And what's more, all the characters at that point can go back and play each other's stages.
With each other's abilities.
Yes.
And there is a sense of discovery there as you're rescuing the tribals, so it's not just a grind.
And also, there are exits to earlier stages that only certain characters can access that then introduce additional stages, like the space station or the water ruin, which were not part of the initial run.
Now, a lot of that repetition, too, really depends on how invested you are in the game. So, Chad, I think you and I don't think either of us necessarily minded, I would put it to you, revisiting these stages.
To me, it was another reason to revisit them.
Yeah,
that I wholeheartedly welcomed.
Yeah, and for the same reason, people actually complained that you couldn't skip cutscenes. So my favorite tune in this game is the spaceship landing theme, and it's yeah, could go on.
Yes,
and I intend
and we probably
will. Sorry. Neither of us are trained singers.
Yeah. It's fantastic. It is fantastic. And I remember from ripping the soundtrack, the longest version of it is the intro to Tofrit.
Oh,
So
yes.
that's where I went to get the rip of it.
But it was a joy, an absolute joy to see this spaceship swooping down to the planet, going
Yeah.
through this landing sequence, and just hearing this incredible adventurous score. It honestly, I'm actually getting literal goosebumps on my arms right now just describing
and then
it.
at the end of the stage too, you would leave the level by accessing the launch pad where your ship had autopiloted to. So it drops you off, you go through the stage, and then you find your ship again and go into it, and that's where the stage ends. It was fantastic.
I will say this. It is how many years later? With 16, 17?
Yeah.
It is that many years later. It is literally, for me, half a lifetime ago. I would like to think, developed into an adult. I would not really identify as a gamer by any stretch of the imagination today. And yet, I still have that spaceship landing theme by Robin Beanland on my phone at all times, because it is the perfect pick-me-up.
Yeah, it's the embodiment of this game. That and every other song in this game. That's the thing, though. You can't even pin it down to one song. That's just the one that introduced every level. But they're all so good.
Yeah, they just all have that exclamation mark to them. It's an adventure.
Right. Exactly. It's like it's how I felt playing Monkey Island. Like there's so much potential to go and explore and do and splatter.
And if that's something that sums up that sort of slightly intangible nature of it, that just hooks people, not everybody, as was very clear, not everybody, but for those of us it hooks in, it's that sense of adventure.
And I think that's probably, Alastair, what you and I read into the pre-release of the game that locked us in.
But so much of it, too, is also, like, every part of the execution of this game sums up the adventure. Even the way the running animations, the way the game encourages you to run. You cannot stay still.
Right.
You're running with purpose.
Yeah, and I also, in revisiting it, I remembered the controls. There were two distinct control schemes. One in which it's a third-person shooter, and then in certain... Well,
when you
actually,
switch to targeting mode?
You switch to targeting mode, where you essentially hold down the R trigger, or the R shoulder button, and at that point, you use the control stick to aim rather than move your character. But the cool thing was that in a world without dual control sticks, you use the N64's C buttons to move forward, back, left, and right, so you could strafe while you were aiming.
It feels like a keyboard and mouse style setup.
Yeah, it's it doesn't have quite the precision that you get with a mouse control, but it's... I think that for the Nintendo 64, it's probably the most in control I ever felt with a shooting game. And
there's even a slight sloppiness to it that actually lends itself well to that. Because, I mean, the default machine gun, like the second level up, one of the guns you'd use the majority of the game, is a very imprecise instrument. When you fire it, the crosshairs actually wobble. And, if there's anything even remotely resembling distance between you and the enemy, 6 shots will land on either side of the drone before it hits them.
Yeah.
And that delightful chaos, adding to that the splatter, the smoke, the explosions, the tribal running into the bombastic score, it doesn't quite feel like you're completely in control, but you have as much control as you could possibly hope to have in that kind of messy situation.
Right, it makes you frantic, but in a good way, and not in a punishing way. When I was recently playing it the other night, there was a situation. I was just going through Goldwood, which is a very early stage, but I had already got the machine gun, and I ran into an open area. There were snipers up top, which you can only really shoot using the aiming mode. But then there were a ton of drones running around on the ground, and me thinking, oh yeah, I'm a good player. I'm gonna go through almost entirely in the manual target mode. I went through and very quickly was overwhelmed because it's a Nintendo 64 control stick. It's a little sticky. The controls are, they aren't quite as refined as they are in modern shooting games. So it was difficult. What I wound up doing though was just, I did what I could. I shot a sniper, and then I abandoned that mode and just started running around spraying gunfire wildly. and I was making progress, albeit, some of the bad guys were shooting me, and I'm sure there's a more efficient way I could be doing it. But in an early stage, I was being prompted to experiment with different styles of gameplay, and I remember there were a couple areas where I accidentally hobbled a drone, and they're just kind of laying there on the ground.
Twitching.
Yes, they're twitching. Their weapons are across the field, and you can go and pick those up for an ammo boost.
It's worth mentioning that you can basically mortally wound certain ants, which is quite brutal, even when it's when you're simply looking at ants. You can be one shot short of having killed a drone. They're just twitching on the ground there. And there'll be doors that only actually open up once every drone is officially dead. So the game actually rather brilliantly and rather cruelly forces you to approach this dying soldier and shoot him. Do the final bullet.
And what's great is if you go up to them while they're twitching on the ground and do your manual target mode and shoot them directly in the brainstem on their head, their head will pop off as their body disappears, and you can collect it.
For, as we established, no reason whatsoever.
None whatsoever. Actually, I think the ant heads.
They were the cheat codes, weren't they?
The cheat codes, yeah, they unlock cheat codes at like 20, 50, and so on. but the tribal heads, nothing.
Guys, this is great, but you were going to tell me what the ending was.
Yeah.
Sure, you want to play it yourself.
Actually, I already know what it is because you guys have mentioned it numerous times, sometimes on this very show.
That's right.
Just for the audience's sake, I'm playing dumb, but I do know what it is. So spoilers if you don't want to play this great game, or if you do want to play it but you just like to be spoiled.
So I recently rewatched the final ending, and I was surprised to see that it's not spelled out. It's left left vague.
I didn't actually get this until I heard your reading of it specifically, and then realized how absurd it was.
Yeah, and you have to sort of infer that through some of the supplementary material from the instruction booklet and from the existence of Jeff and Barry Racing and the defunct Jeff and Barry Racing 2. But basically, you chase down Mizar on his asteroid that is hurtling towards Earth. You battle him.
Die many times in the process.
Yes, that is such a difficult boss battle. And by the way, I was so delighted to see when I replayed this that my save file, there are 6 save files in the game. Of the 6, my first file is my original 100% run. My second file is the game up to Fetbub, the first boss. The third file is the game saved up to Lurg. So, I could go back and replay these bosses at any time. I must have had to skip over the Mechanids. The fourth file is the first Mizar battle in Mizar's Palace. The fifth file is Mizar's second battle on the asteroid. and then the final file is for replay, and that's what I was playing on.
Chad, you and I are cut from the same cloth, and I say this with all the love in the world.
Nerd! I'll take that and wear it as a coat of armor. Anyway, so you fight Mizar, ultimately defeat him. Most of his body blows up, but then there's this tube that falls out, and it mechanically opens up, and there's another tribal in it, dressed just like King Jeff. And Jeff runs over. He says, "Barry, it's you!" and And Barry basically says they had a falling out. I was jealous of you, Jeff. The inference to make is that Jeff and Barry were arcade game developers. They created the highly successful Jeff and Barry Racing. They then created Jeff and Barry Racing 2, but Jeff stole the profits from it, which made Barry violently jealous to the point where he decided to create this alter ego Mizar and commit genocide across the galaxy.
And destroy the Jeff and Barry 2 arcade cabinet in the Big Bad Fun Club.
Right. So, and that is literally the only other reference to the existence of Barry in the entire game. So people might say it's a stretch to think that this is what led to Barry going crazy, but until you get to the asteroid post-Mizar death finale, you have never met Barry.
Yes. And let's just emphasize that his name is Barry. This
Right.
boss you have fought so hard for so many hours to defeat.
He killed millions of people and tribals. He's trying to hurtle an asteroid into Earth.
And it has one more toll, because after this, they still need to stop that asteroid.
Right.
And only one character, is capable of fitting through that little gap. And that's Floyd the droid.
Poor little
no.
Floyd. Yeah.
No.
Floyd sacrifices it. So what Floyd does, he attaches the explosives to his body and flies via a first-person game that you must do after the most challenging thing you've done in the whole
Lord.
game.
my hands would be trembling and sweaty and just a mess.
Yeah, by the way, if you die, I think you have to redo it again. But yeah, basically, you pilot Floyd with explosives strapped to his body to the center of the asteroid and blow it up a la Armageddon, saving Earth in the process.
Does a bitchin' Aerosmith song play?
Yeah, its dude looks like a lady. It's very strange. Very strange.
The one comforting touch is that in the asteroid explosion, you see a piece of Floyd fall out. So, when you first meet him, you have to assemble his pieces scattered all around the place.
Yeah.
I believe Mizar angrily blew him up because it defected.
That's
Now,
right, yeah.
I believe that in the sequel that can exist in our hearts, that he is not beyond reassemblage.
Well, let's talk about that, Alastair. Let's talk about post Jet Force Gemini. It kind of came and went, and I looked it up, and it was the 44th best-selling N64 game worldwide. It sold just a little over 1 million copies, which, for practical reference for our show, Tropical Freeze just crossed 1 million copies worldwide just the last week or so.
Wow, and the Nintendo 64 had a slightly larger install base than the Wii U.
Slightly. I mean, the N64 was basically a disappointment for Nintendo at that time, but I think they would kill to have an N64 level penetration in an install base, you know?
I was being facetious. We're talking about the Nintendo 64 post GoldenEye.
Right. I mean, and it came out in 1999, so there's still a solid 2 years of N64 left, as it being the console for Nintendo gamers at least. But yeah, it sold just over little over 1 million worldwide. Never cracked 1 million in the States or in any territory itself. I mean, that was the total. But there was it wasn't 4Kids or something. Didn't they get the rights to do something with Jet Force Gemini, but nothing ever came of it?
Yeah, they actually secured the merchandise and film rights to Jet Force.
That was incredibly ambitious of them to...
I must say, I'm astonishingly pleased I'd never heard anything about this until now, because it would have been heartbreaking to get your hopes up back in the day.
Yeah. Yeah, this was cited by Wikipedia, so, for what it's worth, but not only that, but there was there was going to be a Game Boy Color version of Jet Force Gemini that it was the as far as I know, aside from Killer Instinct, the modern incarnation of Killer Instinct, the only outsourced Rare title that existed. They weren't doing Game Boy Color Jet Force Gemini in-house, so I'm guessing it wouldn't have included the Rare cow. But
that's really strange, because you would think, like, back in that era, especially the Game Boy Color era, Rare was very protective of their babies. You don't think they would have voluntarily given it up to another studio, especially when they had perfectly capable a portable team, to their own name.
But keep in mind, they had one perfectly capable portable team that was also working on Conker's Pocket Tales, Donkey Kong Country Game Boy Color, the Perfect Dark Game Boy Color game.
Yeah.
I mean, they had a lot on their plate.
Yeah, it just surprises me, because you associate Rare not developing their own properties as a product of the Microsoft era, where they're kind of not what they once were, and they don't really have the say that they had, the creative control they had on Nintendo.
Well, I think back then it was probably a situation of, like, they probably wanted to make the game, but they just didn't have the bandwidth to. So there was a studio called Bits Studios that from what I've seen, it was an almost complete version of Jet Force Gemini. I don't know how closely it followed the N64.
Was it a version, or was it a pseudo-sequel?
I have no idea, but what I've seen of it was basically Juno on Goldwood, which is the first stage of the N64 game.
Wow.
What also Pierce Brosnan refers to his dick as.
Goldwood?
Yeah.
So yeah. Anyway, so that was also a thing that almost came out and just never did. And there's a ROM of it floating around in some collector's hands, but as far as I know, it's never been leaked.
It's never been leaked. That's a crying shame.
If you go to the website Unseen64, you can actually check out some media from the game.
Ooh,
but that's all there is. Yeah.
Well, okay, so besides the that's an episode for that we could do an episode called Honourable Mentions Abortion Clinic, Jet Force Gemini Game Boy Color. So besides Juno and Vela appearing in Minecraft Xbox 360 edition, which they have appeared along with Banjo characters and Conker characters.
Yeah.
They haven't been seen since. Rare's kind of in the middle of a supposed renaissance right now. Phil Spencer is really gung-ho about it, so is Ken Lobb. Battletoads is coming back in some capacity. Rumors are Banjo's coming back some form or fashion. Let's say they really get deep in their library and they get to Jet Force Gemini. Okay. Now, I have no say in this, because obviously I didn't get very far in the game. You guys are the two of the most passionate Jet Force fans I know. How would you do the sequel? What would you want to see?
Well, mine it's obviously a joke sequel, but I would continue the Zodiac tradition to its logical next step.
So you're the killer.
That's right. This is the Summer of Sam. Jet Force Cancer. which naturally follows Gemini, in which a giant crab monster would threaten the galaxy by irradiating the entire universe, and only Juno and Vela can overcome their debilitating chemotherapy symptoms to save the day. No, that's obviously a terrible idea. But no, if I were to do this, I would I would want to see what has become of the Federation. I would like to kind of flesh out that world and follow Juno, Vela, and Lupus on another adventure. Alastair, what would you do with it?
Like you, I'd want to expand the universe, really. The existence of Jet Force Gemini suggests there are indeed many other Jet Force teams out there. I'd love to meet a new trio. I'd love to see them encounter Juno, Vela, and Lupus. But I'd love to just learn a bit more about that. And I think going off the Floyd the Droid idea, I'd love to just follow on that by, maybe start with follow the Star Wars route. Just have a kid on some backwater planet. A piece of robot lands in his backyard. He tries to investigate, piece the robot back together, eventually embarks on a grand universe scaling adventure. Meets up with new people, forms a new Jet Force team, and eventually comes face to face with the architect behind it. James Sherry, host of Amazing.
Classic DKU character.
Yeah. I would just like to say, now this is Jeff and Barry racing.
No,
wild man.
I would love for Alastair for that to be played out, where it's not just a nobody character, but one of the drones who is now, like, obviously there's this huge civilization of drones that Mizar appropriated for his efforts, but I would like one of the Floyd pieces to just fall on a drone planet, and one of the faceless ants becomes intrigued in this. I mean, obviously in a miserless world, what is their purpose? They're just trying to get by. And so you start the game and play the game through the point of view of one of the previous game's chief antagonists.
That would be delightful.
And yeah, ultimately meet up with Juno Vela and recreate Floyd and go on from there.
Here's the important question I would have for a sequel. Would Barry ever be put up for war crimes? Like, would there be a trial?
That's a good question. In the ending cinema of the game, there was a one line of dialogue that you couldn't really hear because the music was so bombastic and overpowering.
Now, just to clarify, this is the only line of dialogue in the entire game.
Not true.
Oh, no?
In the opening to Goldwood, when Juno first walks in, there is some dialogue that says, it's roboticized. It's the only instance of it in the whole game. It's a bit of an outlier. It says, "You must find Mizar tokens, and then you must find gems and defeat the drones, and then you can go to the level exit."
Oh, good lord.
It's like that kind of thing. But aside from that, yeah, the only dialogue in the game is it's very difficult to hear. I picked up on it and eventually replayed it with the music turned all the way down and recorded it. I don't know where that recording exists. If I can pull it up before this episode ends, I'll play it now. If not, sorry, but it's
probably on one of your dusty hard drives under your bed.
Yeah, yes. At the end of the game, basically, you go to Earth. Juno, Vela, and Lupus are given the Star Wars A New Hope ceremony treatment where they're given medals. And
is Lupus given a medal, or does he get the Chewie treatment?
I think he gets the Chewie treatment. At that point, he is a tank after all. So I think he won out on the Bandolier lottery. But the line is King Jeff, who's bestowing these badges on everyone. He goes, Now then, what have we got here? Lovely little badges for you. That's the line of dialogue. And Alastair, you discovered Beanland copping to this, right?
Yes. Well, I'd heard for many years that there was a reference to the UK celebrity Jimmy Savile worked into the ending. Now, he was perhaps more of an upstanding citizen in the public eye then, more so than now.
Oh no!
But people wrote into Scribes saying, "Hey, you snuck a Jimmy Savile reference in. That's great." And we actually found an old tweet from Robin Beanland where he owned up to sneaking it in. So I don't know if he did it himself, but this was a development environment where you could just sneak something in. This totally out of place, off-kilter line.
Much like the BBC was an environment where Jimmy Savile could sneak things in.
God.
So, while unfortunate in hindsight, I just love the idea that they just put that in with, presumably not asking for permission, not clearing it by anyone, just, what the hell, let's just add this non sequitur line of dialogue.
Yeah, it's like they realized they finished the game, they allocated for a 256 megabit cartridge, and they had a few extra kilobits to spare. So, naturally.
I'd like to think there was a choice between improving the frame rate and that. And ultimately, they made the right call.
So, Alastair, would you recommend people go out, purchase a secondhand Nintendo 64 and Jet Force Gemini cartridge and enjoy this game?
Given the polarizing nature of it, I think largely due to people perhaps giving up a bit too early, being a bit put off by the controls, a bit put off, as many were, that it was not part of the arbitrary Donkey Kong universe.
Right here.
So look, I cannot wholeheartedly recommend it without hesitation. It is a game that can be patchy, it does have its flaws, but it is a labor of love, of intense love, and I feel nothing but warmth for it. If you cornered me, put a gun to my head and asked me to shout out the name of a favorite game, honestly, Jet Force Gemini may very well be the words that come out of my mouth. I just have nothing but love for it. And I would recommend that anyone who wants to give it a try, anyone who can just look past a few little difficulties, a few dated aspects, a few oversights.
A noted pedophile. Snuck.
A reference to noted pedophile, yeah.
Yeah,
but that's only if you 100% it.
Which you probably will not do. But yeah, look, give it a try. Give it a try. It is a lovely game, and it does deserve a bit more attention. It deserves more love, and it deserves to be remembered a lot more fondly than it is.
Yeah, I would say that with all those caveats in mind, I agree with you. Definitely. They just released the Metroid Prime trilogy on the Wii U, and I had been playing Metroid Prime.
Should have been Jet Force Gemini.
Well, that's the thing, is the entire N64 generation, hardcore Nintendo fans were clamoring for a Metroid game, and they didn't seem to realize that Rare gave them a Metroid game that actually had personality.
Oh.
Dude, Metroid doesn't have personality. It fucking doesn't. It's a great series.
I'm just trying to create artificial controversy here.
But here's the thing, though. Metroid, all it was a Ridley Scott tribute.
I think Ridley Scott is too big for Smash Brothers.
Well,
because there's a big space dragon.
Yeah, but
I get it.
I got you. But that's, and Metroid was fantastic, and I love Metroid to death. And I played the NES one. I didn't do the Game Boy one. I played the SNES one, and I love Metroid Prime. But those games are devoid of character. There's fantastic world building, especially in Prime with all of the scanning, but there's no character. There's no sense of humor. It's so straight-laced and stone-faced, and Jet Force Gemini was the Metroid game that Metroid fans didn't know they needed. And I think that it's a shame that it didn't tap into that desire in people. And if you played Metroid Other M and you were disappointed, but you liked the idea of a third-person Metroid, fucking get Jet Force Gemini. That's what this game is. It's brilliant. It's so brilliant. The gameplay mechanic. We talked a lot about the ancillary stuff, like the sense of humor, the levels, the music, but the core gameplay is so unique and so stylized. I haven't seen a game that really does what Jet Force Gemini did ever since. The closest I can even think is probably one of those third-person run-and-guns like Mass Effect or like Gears of War, but Jet Force is special and did it first. It's honestly one of the only examples of post DKC Rare not perfecting an existing genre but creating one on their own.
Interesting.
And it's fabulous. It's absolutely fantastic, and I enjoy it not only in a time capsule but on its own merits in a modern world. I love the game.
You're a modern girl, and you have your Jet Force Gemini to help navigate this topsy. I don't know where I'm going with this.
This has been a File 2 production.
Que rico.